The proposition, Isabella Ela Monroe stared at the stack of foreclosure notices spread across her desk, the weight of 3 generations of family legacy crushing down on her shoulders. The historic Monroe hotel chain, once the crown jewel of boutique luxury hospitality, was now drowning in debt, with creditors circling like well-dressed vultures. "Ms. Monroe," her assistant called through the intercom. "The bank representatives are here." Ella straightened her tailored navy blazer and quickly dabbed at her eyes. At 28, she'd never imagined she would be the one to lose what her great-grandfather had built from nothing. 5 distinctive luxury hotels that had hosted presidents, celebrities, and royalty for over a century. "Send them in," she replied, forcing confidence into her voice despite the tightness in her chest. The meeting went exactly as expected. 60 days until foreclosure proceedings would begin. No extensions, no mercy. Just clinical financial reality delivered by men who saw her family's legacy as nothing more than numbers on a spreadsheet. After they left, Isla stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse office, gazing down at the original Monroe Grand below, the flagship hotel with its distinctive Art Deco architecture, and the chandeliers her great-grandmother had personally selected from Venice. Soon it would all belong to someone else. Her phone rang, displaying her father's care facility in Switzerland. Thomas Monroe had suffered a massive stroke 6 months earlier. The same week they discovered the company's financial director had been embezzling funds for years. Her father's ongoing medical care had depleted their personal reserves, leaving nothing to save the business. "Your father had a comfortable day," the nurse reported gently. "He asked about the hotels again." "Tell him everything's fine," Isla replied, the lie bitter on her tongue. She couldn't bear for him to know his life's work was crumbling while he was unable to help. When she finally left the office that evening, the skies opened in a sudden summer downpour, drenching her before she could hail a taxi. Perfect, she thought bitterly, standing rain-soaked at the curb, a metaphorical ending to a disastrous day. "Ms. Monroe?" The deep voice came from behind her, followed by the shelter of a large black umbrella. She turned to find herself looking up at Alexander Donovan, CEO of Horizon Hospitality Group, one of the largest luxury hotel conglomerates in the world. Isla's pulse quickened. Everyone in the hospitality industry knew Xander Donovan. His ruthless business acumen had built Horizon from one struggling property into an international empire in just 10 years. He was as famous for his strategic brilliance as for his aversion to commitment, both professionally and personally. "Mr. Donovan," she acknowledged, struggling to maintain her composure while rain dripped from her hair. "What brings you to the Monroe?" His intense gray eyes assessed her with unsettling directness. "I was hoping to speak with you, actually. Do you have a moment?" 20 minutes later, Isla sat across from Xander Donovan in the Monroe Grand's elegant bar, a glass of untouched scotch before her. She'd changed into dry clothes kept in her office, but still felt at a disadvantage facing his impeccable appearance in what was clearly a bespoke suit. "I'll be direct, Ms. Monroe," he said, his voice carrying just enough warmth to soften his businesslike demeanor. "I know about your financial situation." Isla stiffened. "If you're here to make an acquisition offer, I'm not," he interrupted smoothly. "At least not in the way you're thinking." He leaned forward slightly, his presence commanding the space between them. At around 40, Xander Donovan carried the confidence of a man who had bent the world to his will through sheer determination. His dark hair was touched with silver at the temples, adding distinguished character to classically handsome features. "I have a proposition that could solve both our problems," he continued. "Both our problems?" Isla echoed skeptically. "Forgive me, Mr. Donovan, but I wasn't aware Horizon was facing any issues." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Nothing as dire as yours, but significant nonetheless. I'm pursuing a partnership with the Lim Group from Singapore. Conservative, traditional investors who control access to markets I need for Horizon's next expansion phase." "And this concerns the Monroe hotels, how exactly?" "The Lim family places enormous value on stability, heritage, and family. My reputation as a—" He paused, searching for the right word. "Unattached bachelor has become problematic. They're hesitant to partner with someone they perceive as lacking commitment and traditional values." Isla's brow furrowed. "I still don't see—" "I need a wife, Ms. Monroe, for appearances, for business, for a limited time." The words hung between them as Isla struggled to process what he was suggesting. "You can't be serious. Entirely serious." Xander's expression remained calm, as if proposing a standard business merger rather than marriage. 2 years. We appear as a committed couple from respected families. I secure my investment partnership. You receive enough capital to clear your debts and revitalize the Monroe chain. You want to buy a wife, Isla stated flatly. I want to enter a mutually beneficial arrangement, he corrected. One that solves your financial crisis while addressing my investor relations challenge. A contract with clear terms, expectations, and an end date. Isla's mind raced as she considered the absurdity of his proposition against the desperate reality of her situation. And if I refuse? Then I wish you luck with your creditors, he replied simply. But consider this. Your great-grandfather built these hotels to last generations. Your father dedicated his life to preserving that legacy. Are you prepared to lose it all because a temporary business arrangement offends your sensibilities? His words struck with precision, finding the exact center of her vulnerability, her sense of duty to her family's legacy and to her father, who would be devastated to learn their heritage had been lost. What would this arrangement entail exactly? She asked, hating that she was even considering it. We would maintain separate residences but appear together at key business and social functions. We would present as a committed couple to the world while understanding privately that this is strictly business. His eyes held hers steadily. No physical requirements beyond what's necessary to maintain appearances. A flush crept up Isla's neck at the implication. And after 2 years? We part amicably. You keep the financial settlement. I retain the business connection secured during our marriage. Everyone gets what they need. Isla took a long sip of her scotch, welcoming the burn. I'll need to see specific terms. Everything in writing. Of course. Xander nodded, reaching for his phone. My lawyers can have a draft contract to you tomorrow morning. As he made arrangements, Isla studied him surreptitiously. Alexander Donovan was undeniably attractive, with a commanding presence that filled the room. Under different circumstances, she might have been intrigued by the intensity in his gray eyes or the rare glimpses of genuine emotion that occasionally broke through his controlled facade. But this wasn't about attraction. This was about survival. Why me? She asked suddenly. You could approach any number of women for this arrangement. Xander set down his phone, considering her question. The Lims respect the Monroe name and its history. Your family's reputation for integrity would benefit my standing with them. And you have a practical reason to agree, which means you're less likely to develop complications. Complications? Emotional attachments, he clarified. This is business, Ms. Monroe. I need a partner who understands that. The presumption that she couldn't possibly develop feelings for him should have been offensive, yet Isla found it oddly reassuring. Clear boundaries were exactly what such an unconventional arrangement would require. I'll review your contract, she said finally, but I'm not making any promises. Xander stood buttoning his jacket with practiced ease. That's all I ask for now. My driver can take you home. As they walked through the historic lobby of the hotel her family had built, Isla felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. The elegant moldings, the grand staircase, the legacy of generations, all of it would be lost without drastic action. For what it's worth, Xander said quietly as they reached the entrance. I admire what your family built. It would be a shame to see it dismantled by bankers who don't understand its true value. The simple observation, delivered without his earlier calculation, caught Isla off guard. For a moment, she glimpsed something beyond the business-like exterior, a flash of genuine appreciation for craftsmanship and history. Thank you, she replied, surprised by his unexpected sincerity. That actually means something coming from you. Outside, his driver held an umbrella against the continuing rain as Xander escorted her to his waiting car. Until tomorrow, Ms. Monroe. Until tomorrow, she echoed, sliding into the leather seat. As the car pulled away, Isla watched Xander Donovan standing in the rain, his tall figure silhouetted against the grand entrance of her family's hotel. What she was considering felt impossible, unthinkable, yet the alternative was certain destruction of everything her family had built. Marriage to a stranger. For business. Her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend Jade. How bad was the bank meeting? Isla stared at the screen, wondering how to possibly explain the choice now facing her. Finally, she typed, Need to talk. Now. You won't believe what just happened. Some decisions were too enormous to face alone. even for a woman who had been handling crises on her own since her father's stroke. And agreeing to become the contractual wife of Alexander Donovan would certainly qualify as the most consequential, and possibly the most insane, decision of her life. Paper promises 1 month after their carefully orchestrated wedding ceremony. A small, elegant affair documented for the Lim Group investors. Isla and Xander settled into a surprisingly manageable routine. They occupied separate penthouses in the same luxury building, appearing together at strategic events while maintaining professional distance otherwise. Tonight was their first major public appearance at the Metropolitan Museum Charity Gala. Isla examined her reflection in the mirror, an emerald gown that complemented her auburn hair and brought out the green of her eyes. Her phone chimed with a text from Xander. Car arriving in 10 minutes. When she opened her door, something shifted in Xander's expression as his eyes moved over her. "You look stunning," he said, his usual businesslike tone softened. "Thank you," Isla replied, momentarily disarmed by the genuine appreciation in his gaze. "You clean up rather well yourself." The gala was a glittering spectacle of wealth and influence. Xander kept his hand at the small of her back as they navigated the crowd, the simple touch sending unexpected warmth through her. He introduced her to business associates with practiced ease, his demeanor that of a proud husband rather than a business partner. "Xander Donovan with a wife," came a silky voice behind them. "I never thought I'd see the day." They turned to face a striking blonde whose familiarity with Xander was immediately apparent. "Victoria," he acknowledged with a slight nod. "I'd like you to meet my wife, Isabella." "The hotel heiress," Victoria said, her smile not reaching her eyes. Such a convenient match. Xander always did have a talent for beneficial acquisitions. Isla felt Xander tense beside her, his hand pressing more firmly against her back. "My wife isn't an acquisition, Victoria. She's my partner." The possessive tone in his voice surprised Isla, as did the genuine irritation that flashed across his features. This wasn't part of their performance, it seemed instinctively protective. Later that evening, as they danced beneath the museum's magnificent ceiling, Isla found herself relaxing into Xander's embrace. "Who was she?" she asked quietly. "Someone who thought marriage was another business deal to negotiate," he replied, his expression unreadable. "She miscalculated. Unlike us?" Isla couldn't resist asking. "Our marriage is exactly that, a business deal." Something flickered in Xander's eyes. "Perhaps, but at least we're honest about our arrangement." The following weekend brought their first overnight trip, a retreat with the Lim Group executives at Xander's estate in the Hamptons. While preparing breakfast in the kitchen before their guests arrived, Isla discovered a child's drawing magnetized to the refrigerator. "My goddaughter," Xander explained, appearing in the doorway. "She's 6. But as the weekend progressed, Isla accidentally uncovered more evidence of children in Xander's life. Photos, small toys tucked away in drawers, a cabinet filled with art supplies. Her curiosity piqued when she overheard him on the phone discussing a center renovation and making sure the kids have everything they need. On Sunday evening, after the successful retreat that had clearly impressed the Singapore investors, Isla finally asked directly, "Who are they? The children you're helping?" Xander was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. "Foster kids," he finally said. "I fund several programs for children in the system. It's not something I publicize. Why not? It would certainly help your image with investors like the Lims." His expression hardened. "Because it's not about image. Some things shouldn't be leveraged for business advantage." The simple declaration revealed more about the man behind the corporate mask than anything in their contract. As they drove back to the city, Isla found herself stealing glances at her paper husband, wondering what other depths lay beneath his carefully controlled surface. Crossing line 6 months into their arrangement, Isla's father suffered a setback in Switzerland. She was preparing to fly out alone when Xander appeared at her door with packed bags. "What are you doing?" she asked, confused. "Coming with you," he replied simply. "Family emergencies are covered in Section 12 of our agreement. As optional appearances," Isla reminded him. "The Lim Group wouldn't know or care if you're there." Xander's expression softened. "This isn't about the Lims, Isla. No one should face this kind of situation alone." Throughout the week at the Swiss medical facility, Xander was a quiet, steady presence handling arrangements, ensuring Isla ate and rested. and even spending hours reading to her unconscious father while she slept. When Thomas Monroe finally stabilized, Isla found Xander in the hospital corridor, his usual composure cracked with visible exhaustion. "Thank you," she said quietly, the words inadequate for the support he'd provided that went far beyond their contractual obligations. His hand found hers, fingers intertwining naturally. That's what partners do. The trip marked a shift in their relationship. The careful distance they'd maintained began to dissolve as they shared more meals, conversations, and unguarded moments. Isla found herself looking forward to their time together, while Xander seemed to invent reasons to extend their interactions beyond what their arrangement required. 2 weeks before Christmas, they traveled to Xander's family estate for a holiday gathering with business associates. A sudden snowstorm stranded them along with several guests. The historic mansion transformed into a winter sanctuary cut off from the outside world. Late that night, after their guests had retired, Isla found Xander in the library staring into the fireplace. "A glass of scotch in hand, can't sleep?" she asked, joining him on the leather sofa. "This house has too many ghosts," he replied quietly, "especially at Christmas." For the first time, Xander spoke about his childhood, losing his parents at 12, bouncing through foster homes, and finally being taken in by his elderly great-uncle who owned the estate. "He taught me business, but not much about family," Xander admitted. "By the time I came here, I was already focused on building something no one could take away." "Is that why you helped those foster children?" Isla asked softly. "To give them what you didn't have." His eyes met hers, vulnerability visible in a way she'd never seen before. "Someone should." The simple answer, devoid of his usual calculated phrasing, touched something deep within her. Without thinking, Isla leaned forward and kissed him gently. What began as comfort quickly transformed into something more urgent. Years of loneliness and carefully maintained control dissolved as they surrendered to an attraction neither had acknowledged. Their bodies came together with a passion that surprised them both, emotional walls crumbling with each touch and whispered endearment. Morning brought harsh reality and unspoken questions. As they dressed in silence, Isla finally spoke. "This complicates things." "It was bound to happen eventually," Xander replied, his business mask slipping back into place. "Physical attraction isn't uncommon in arrangements like ours." The clinical description of their passionate night stung more than Isla expected. "Of course, just biology." "Isla, we should maintain more distance," she interrupted, unable to bear his rationalization of what had felt so genuine. For clarity's sake, something like hurt flashed in his eyes before he nodded formally. "If that's what you think is best?" Neither acknowledged the truth, that what had begun as a paper promise was developing emotional depth neither had anticipated nor prepared for. Terms violated. With the Singapore investment secured and their marriage having served its business purpose, Isla expected Xander to begin discussing their eventual separation. Instead, he seemed increasingly invested in her hotel chain's restoration, personally overseeing the renovations of the flagship property. "This isn't necessary," Isla told him one evening as they reviewed architectural plans in his penthouse. "Our agreement only required financial stabilization, not complete restoration." Xander's expression remained focused on the blueprints. The Monroe Grand deserves to be returned to its original glory. These details matter. His unexpected passion for preserving her family's legacy confused Isla almost as much as the growing ache she felt when they were apart. What had begun as a business arrangement had become something neither had anticipated, something that felt dangerously like real marriage. Their carefully constructed world threatened to unravel when Xander's business rival James Hartwell publicly questioned the authenticity of their relationship at an industry conference. Sources suggest the Donovan-Monroe marriage coincided suspiciously with both the Lim Group negotiations and the Monroe chain's financial rescue, Hartwell told reporters. "One might wonder if there's a prenuptial agreement with an expiration date." The scandal spread through financial and social circles, endangering both the Singapore partnership and the Monroe Hotel's fragile recovery. Xander immediately called an emergency meeting with their attorneys to control the damage. "Where did he get this information?" Isla asked as they gathered in Xander's office. "Our contract is completely confidential." "Someone leaked details," Xander replied grimly. "The question is how to address it publicly." Their attorney presented options: denial, deflection, or legal action against Hartwell. As the discussion continued, Isla noticed Xander's uncharacteristic silence. Later that evening, she discovered why. While searching for documents in his home office, she found divorce papers already drafted, dated for exactly 2 years after their wedding, the minimum term specified in their contract. The evidence of Xander's planning for their inevitable separation shouldn't have hurt. This was always meant to be temporary. Yet seeing the document with its cold legal language dismantling their relationship felt like a physical blow. When confronted by his board of directors about the marriage's authenticity, Xander stunned everyone with his response. "My relationship with my wife began as a strategic partnership," he admitted frankly, "but as anyone who's spent time with us knows, it has evolved into something much more genuine. I won't apologize for finding personal happiness alongside business success." His declaration made headlines and temporarily quieted the scandal, but Xander and Isla barely spoke about it privately. Both were guarding secrets. He never mentioned the divorce papers she had found, and she never revealed her discovery. With 1 month remaining in their contractual term, Isla received an offer from an international hotel group seeking her expertise and family name for a new venture, one that would give her complete independence from both creditors and Xander. Though tempted, she declined without telling him, unwilling to disrupt their final weeks together. The distance between them grew despite living in the same building, both afraid to acknowledge what their marriage had become and what they truly wanted it to be. Renegotiation. On the morning marking exactly 2 years since their wedding, Isla received a text from Xander. Car arriving at noon. Meeting with attorneys. This was it, the formal end of their arrangement. She dressed carefully, choosing a blue dress she'd worn during happier moments of their marriage, and tried to prepare herself emotionally for the dissolution of a relationship that had become far more meaningful than either had intended. Instead of taking her to his attorney's office, the car drove to the Monroe Grand Hotel. Puzzled, Isla followed Xander through the lobby that had been transformed during the renovation, restored to its original Art Deco splendor while incorporating modern luxury. "Why are we here?" she asked as he led her to the historic ballroom where generations of New York society had celebrated since 1920. "This seemed more appropriate than a lawyer's office," Xander replied, stopping in the center of the empty space. "Your great-grandparents danced here on their wedding day. Your parents held their reception in this room." Isla's heart squeezed painfully. "And now we finalize our divorce here? That's rather poetic in a devastating way." Xander's expression softened. "Is that what you think this is about?" "I found the papers in your office," she admitted. The divorce filing already prepared for today's date. Understanding dawned in his eyes. "You found the contingency papers my attorneys prepared, the ones I told them I hope never to use." "What?" "Isla." He stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "I had the papers drafted because that was our agreement. But I've spent the last year hoping you might consider a different arrangement." "I don't understand." "What began as business has become the most important relationship in my life," he said simply. "Somewhere between board meetings and family emergencies, between public appearances and private moments, I fell in love with my wife." Isla stared at him, scarcely believing what she was hearing. "But you've been so distant these past few months." "Because I was afraid," he admitted. "Afraid you were counting the days until our contract ended and you could be free of this arrangement. Afraid I'd become another obligation you had to fulfill." "I turned down an international position," Isla confessed quietly, "one that would have given me complete independence. I couldn't bear the thought of leaving when our time was ending anyway." Xander's expression transformed with hope. "Then perhaps we're both terrible at communication." From his pocket, he withdrew not divorce papers, but a small velvet box. "This belonged to my mother. My uncle kept it for me all these years." Inside was a vintage emerald ring, its deep green stone catching the light. "I'm not proposing again," Xander clarified with a hint of humor. "Technically, we're already married, but I am suggesting a contract renegotiation." "What terms did you have in mind?" Isla asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "No expiration date. No performance requirements, just two people who found real love in the most unexpected arrangement." He held the ring between them. "What do you say, Mrs. Donovan? Would you consider making this marriage permanent?" Tears blurred Isla's vision as she nodded. I think that could be arranged. As Xander slipped the ring onto her finger alongside her original wedding band, he pulled her close. I should warn you, I'm much better at acquisitions than relationships. Good thing I'm excellent at renovations, Isla replied, rising on tiptoes to kiss her husband. No longer a business partner, but the man she had unexpectedly fallen in love with. Some things are worth the investment. 1 year later, they renewed their vows in the same ballroom, this time surrounded by friends and family, including Isla's recovered father. Where their first ceremony had been a business transaction with witnesses, this celebration was a genuine commitment between two people who had discovered that some contracts are meant to be broken, and some paper promises are meant to become real.